All right, let's go ahead and get started. Well, welcome to the final part in our mental health series sponsored by the School of Continuing Professional Studies. My name is Jimmy Sanders, serve as the Assistant Dean of Academic and Enrollment Services, and we have today Mr. Enrique Silva, who will be presenting on mastering mental health resources. And so, with that being said, I'm going to open the floor up to Mr. Silva. Also, I want folks to be aware that if you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the chat. You can email the presenter directly, or you can email myself. And you can also enter any questions or comments in the chat anonymously as well. So, with that being said, the floor is now open. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Hello, my name is Enrique. I'm one of the clinical mental health counselors here at DePaul. I also serve as the assistant director of clinical services here. Yeah, hoping to make a little bit of time to share just some information about mental health resources and resources in general. I'll kind of explain as we go through it how this comes in, but I also want to spend a good piece of time just talking about using resources, when to use them, how to use them. When people say resources, what does that even mean? I'll say for myself as a first generation student, I know a lot better now. I learned through my mistakes about what it means to use resources and when I needed them. But I will say back when I was an undergrad and later grad school, I I think I knew that those resources were available to me, but I just didn't know where they fit in. I didn't know who to call, what to do. And all those questions just kind of stayed lingering in my head. And so even though I knew, you could tell me that, like, there's an office for financial aid, you can ask them questions. Or, there's an office of like for student involvement. I think I would have been at the time thinking, well, yeah, I know that, but now what? And so I want to talk a little bit about that too. Not only just how do we access those things, but maybe some of the things that get in our way. I'll hop right into things. Again, thank you, Jimmy. And if anyone has questions, please feel free to send them in the chat or hop in to ask. Um, like I said, we're going to do a little bit of covering of what does it actually look like when we talk about resources, when a mental health professional or anybody in that helping profession says resources. It's almost like a catch-all term. So I want to just talk a little bit about that. I want to mention why, when we use resources, how are you meant to utilize them, and then develop a little bit of insight into, like, maybe again why you might not be using them. And I'll share a little bit of information about some of the things here at DePaul. Some of these may be things you already know about. Some of them may be totally new to you. And what we'll find is when we think about resources, they really are like rooms. And we'll talk about getting keys to the room, but they are like rooms that until you go into that room, can you really understand all of the furniture that's inside of it? So when I say resource, again, this may feel really general, but I think it's an interesting way to think about resources. Resources can be anything from websites, YouTube videos, just business cards, whatever. Something that's going to offer us a little bit of information, guidance, or direction on something we're working on. Maybe that's on a paper, maybe that's on a question we have about tuition, maybe that's again getting connected with a mental health counselor or just something that will support our mental health. Um, so that again, that might look like anything from a business card to a website link. I'll say to my students, hey, I'm going to send you some resources. And I send them a link and they'll say, well, I didn't know what to do with it. And I think that's a really common thing, that we know these things are out there, but we don't always know what the next steps are. So I want you to kind of keep your eyes and ears open, that as you go through your day-to-day life, you're going to see resources everywhere, phone numbers, flyers on, light posts. There's going to be things everywhere. To me, the trick isn't, can we know them? You probably do know them. You have Google. But to me, the real trick is being able to know, when am I using it? How am I using it? What am I using it for? So I want you to think of these resources as the keys to that room. A lot of times when we need resources, it's when we're in a little bit of a jam. Maybe we have a problem. Maybe there's something we're uncertain about. Maybe we're just in need of support. And people may get information about, again, about offices, about things that are available here on campus. And they may think to themselves, well, how's this actually going to help? Again, I don't want people to think that that thing will be the end all be all. It may just be the start of things. So I want people to think of these resources as just grease. They get us going. They're the entryway into like learning new information. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But again, I think resources are a way for us to get different perspective, get some clarification on things we're knowing, and maybe even maximize somebody else's knowledge and information they have for our benefit. There's this concept from Chris Voss. Chris Voss is a hostage negotiator, or was a hostage negotiator with the FBI, and he talks about this concept of black swans. These are the little bits of information that we don't know at the outset of a problem. And when we do find them out, they are just total game changers. They're super rare. They may not even be really obvious, but once we find it, it does make a difference. When somebody sends you a link, if whether that's a professor, maybe that's something you're researching on your own, get familiar with what those things are. Just scour the website, see if they have an FAQ section. Are there contact information available? Are you maybe going to have to email them, or is there a phone number on there? What sort of things are they offering, and are they offering information that you're actually looking for, or is maybe what you're looking for in a different office? Getting familiar with it just lets us know, hey, I'm in the right place. And clarify your purpose. Well, if I'm going to use this website, reach out to this therapist, speak with the dean of students. Be mindful of what it is you're reaching out for. What are the things you want to know? So when that first interaction is done, you have that answer. If there's things you're not sure about, how do we get started? When I think about using resources, whether those professors, offices here, I think people might say, well, those aren't really related to my mental health. How is like getting help on this paper or getting help with the career center really even beneficial to anything outside of like getting a job or writing a paper? And I really do think because all of those things build up facets of our life, they support us. And in just natural progression, they're going to impact and support our mental health. That when we are struggling with the paper, we get stressed. Maybe if we have a hard time looking for employment, or we're nervous about submitting an application for a job and we're not sure if we're hitting all the right notes with our cover letter, that's a great place for the Career Center to help brush it up and build that confidence so that when we do submit it, we can feel good about that submission. So coming in with an idea of what it is we're hoping to get out of this is, to me, one of the keys of getting this. Write down what those things are. Be conscious of it. I know I would walk into meetings with professors and be like, I don't know what it is I'm trying to ask here. And I would sit down and they'd ask me like, well, what's the question you have? And I'd have to formulate it there on the spot. And I realized with more practice that, oh, there are definitely specific things I want answered. And when I walked out, I felt a huge sense of relief. I had some direction. I knew where to go. And just a quick note on, again, reasons we don't use resources. There's some really obvious surface level ones people don't think to. I can't tell you how many times where I meet with a student and they'll maybe have a question about financial aid. And I'll ask, have you talked to anybody in financial aid? And they say, no, not yet. I've been just like worrying about it. And I've been looking at like one to paw. I'm not really sure what to do with it. Really common. Maybe they don't even know like a certain office exists. I know when I was in college, I didn't know there was a counseling center. I didn't know what they did. And even if you told me that they existed, I would say, well, I don't know what they do. Again, we have Google at our fingertips. We don't have too much of a reason to be stuck in that. We might just get stuck worrying. We're so worried about a problem that we're thinking about the problem over and over again, but we're not quite out of that cycle to start looking for solutions. We might not just have experience, whether that's reaching out to a professor, asking questions. And so doing so can feel like a real hurdle sometimes. It's something I'll encourage students to do all the time, beginning of a quarter, beginning of a job. Find those key players. If you're starting a quarter, get to know your professors, just introduce yourself to them. If you're starting a job, get to know who's there, whether that's a janitor, whether that's an HR person, whether that's just like your boss outside of your duties, so that as you get to know them, you can trust, hey, I do have a question. Who can I ask of this? There have been times I've been locked and I've known somebody here who does some of the maintenance work, and they've been happy to open the door for me, but I knew that I can do that based on those conversations. And on a deeper level, there's other reasons I think we don't use resources. Sometimes people maybe feel guilt about needing them in the first place. They just kind of think, I should be able to do this on my own. And then we kind of get stuck. There's things, again, right accessible to us. What I tell students is like, whether it's HPW or UCAPS here, or Dean of Students, you are paying for us. It's in your tuition. Might as well go ahead and use it. I also think there's some worry that using these resources will backfire, that, if in asking financial aid about my scholarships, they're going to tell me something I don't want to hear, or they're going to become aware of money that I do owe, but they didn't know it before that I came in. Trust me, they know the money we owe. And if anything, that information is just going to be more for us to work with. In my experience, making this good decisions is about making informed decisions with all of the information we have accessible to us, not making what seems like rational decisions based on limited information. And again, I think sometimes people just doubt that the resource can help. They think, oh, maybe it'll they're going to help explain to me what I need help with, but they're not going to fix it. And that may be the case, right? Like when I would get financial aid reminders about like tuition money that I didn't have at the time, no amount of meetings is going to make that amount of money pop up in my bank account, but it did give me information. I learned that I can make a payment plan. I learned that I didn't have to finish that payment plan during the course of the academic year. I had a couple months afterwards. So again, all that information helps us make good decisions. And the last thing I get from students is like, well, I know this is who I talk to, but I don't know when. And I tell people there's no like statute on this. There's no statute of limitations. You can go whenever. You can go before you need help. It's a good time to get clarification, answer any questions you might have. Sometimes they're even just preemptive. Hey, I was wondering if this might be something I could use help on, and running it by a person in that office. We get plenty of times, and we mentioned in some of these workshops before, but we offer consultation. There are times when students maybe are concerned for themselves or concerned for a friend, and they're not sure if they should speak up. They're not sure if they should do something. We're more than glad to help clarify, whether that's us, maybe that's getting a friend connected to another office. Maybe that's just informing them about like, oh, if you talk to the dean's office, they can actually speak with your professors and advocate on your behalf. They don't know those things until they come and talk to somebody who can help make that connection. And again, to me, it's a matter of getting connected sooner than later. Think about this with like doctor's offices. How often, and maybe you're like younger me, where you wait until you're really sick to schedule a doctor's appointment, and then you find out the doctor's appointment, like they're not available to see you for like a month and a half. Or maybe you need to go like get new glasses or contacts, and you're like, oh, I'll find somebody that I can work with. And then you do it, and they tell you got to wait 3 weeks, and maybe your lenses are broken at that time. Having some of these things beforehand can be so helpful. And again, I know maybe contact lenses or glasses don't feel even related to mental health. They absolutely are. When we're able to see and get through our day, we're going to feel better. When we can sit in class and not be coughing up a lung, we're going to feel better. If we're not worrying about when we have to pay back our financial aid, we're going to feel a little bit better. So all of these things make up what we call our biopsychosocial model, that everybody's general well-being is a product of all those things: their biology, how they're feeling, their psychology is just their mental makeup, and what maybe most people think of when they traditionally think of therapy and mental health, and social, the people they're around, who they're with, the people that support them. Are their basic needs met? Are they eating well? Or do they have a roof over their head? When those things are addressed, maybe some of you might be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When those basic needs are met, we're able to build upon that. We're able to come to school, we're able to learn, we're able to become better versions of ourselves because we have those basic things met. And again, using these resources as a way of getting those basic needs met. So I want to share some information about our offices. The first most obvious one, DePaul UCAPS, we got a couple of offices down here at the Lincoln Park, and then over at the Loop as well. We offer short-term individual therapy. We do some group therapy as well, some crisis support. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll do consultation. We have connection with a consulting psychiatrist. We have a couple of counselors who specialize in our what we call our trauma track. We specialize in relationship violence or dating violence. And then we also, like I mentioned earlier, connect people to resources. Maybe there is something a student is needing and we're just not the place for it. And that's my job to triage, right? I tell people if you go into a doctor's office and you come in with a cough and a broken leg, and the doctor says, I can't do anything about the cough, but I think I could like stitch up that leg. They may not be the person. You may want to meet with a surgeon for that. In the same way, you may get a surgeon who's like scheduling a surgery, like, well, you have a cold, like, I could take care of that too. We want to make sure we're seeing the right people for the right concerns. And just some more information about what we offer support around. For students who are experiencing anxiety and depression, which are just the most common issues we see, but also really common. Students today have stresses like I could never imagine, not just maybe even like 10, 15 years ago. The things y'all go through now are a little bit more complex than when I had to with social media, with the job market, with news, all of those things I think play a role in our mental health. And in that same vein, being able to support students around relationship issues, eating concerns, maybe the trauma they've experienced, maybe concerns around their identity. All of these things can bring a person into our office, and what that looks like is different and tailored for each person. Maybe that's working on social skills. Maybe that's working on their self-talk. Maybe that's working on something that's more behavioral and making sure they're developing routines that are helpful for them. Maybe it's connecting them to the Career Center. I'll tell people like I'm more than glad to help you talk through what you want to include on a resume or a cover letter. In terms of writing it, I am not your person. My grammar went away when I finished high school, but I do know people who can help with that. Over in the Career Center, over in the Writing Center, there are plenty of folks here on campus, again, that you are paying for. That'd be more than glad to support you around some of these things. We have HPW. They're also up here in the Student Center, and they do a wide range of support. I'm just listing a couple here. Again, that's what Google is going to be our friend here. There's links that I'll attach in this PowerPoint as well. They support students around concerns with alcohol and substance misuse and prevention. So they actually do these two-part series with students called K6 and Basics. They're just two-part informationals. In the first part, they'll meet with people, talk about their history of substance use, learn a little bit about them, and then give them a little bit of homework, something that they can use to reflect. And in that second meeting, they'll reflect on that. They'll talk through it and maybe even make a plan, maybe not for treatment going forward, but for how does that student want to continue to manage or regulate the way they use substances. They offer support around sleep concerns and tobacco cessation for people who are interested in cutting back and people who are interested in like just doing sleep challenges. Again, things that support our physical health and then later play a part in our mental health. Dean of Students. Most people assume Dean of Students is just there in charge, like in high school, when students get in trouble, and they do adjudicate the student code of conduct, but they also do other things too. They support students in crisis situations. They offer referrals for students of concern. So much like our office, if they hear about a student, they're going to reach out, not as a way to punish them, not because they violated the student code of conduct, but because they know, oh, maybe this person would benefit from talking with an advisor. Maybe this person could get connected with a mentor and somebody that they can learn from over their next few years here at DePaul. In some emergency situations, they can even release funds for one-time payments if students are going to be short on tuition or I think it's for tuition specific, but if they're short on tuition for any number of life circumstances that can come up, they can be there for that. And again, these are really common concerns that we'll hear from students and like, I don't know who to talk to. There's this thing that came up. See if somebody can help out with that. And again, those things go a long way in being able to support our mental health. The one most of y'all are probably familiar with, One DePaul. One DePaul is kind of a catch-all, from financial aid to registering for classes to support with administrative withdrawals. And some of these things may not be relevant to you today. You may not need your transcripts until graduation or some job asks for it. That doesn't mean it's not good to know where it's housed. And so when the day does come that you need to turn your transcript somewhere, it could be helpful to have that in your back pocket and know, oh yeah, One DePaul is the person for it. Wait, how do I go about requesting it? One DePaul. Their website's listed and it'll be linked along in this PowerPoint as well. You'll have to submit immunization records. Like there's all these things that a lot of times people will be like, well, where do I submit that? This is where just Googling and researching comes in handy, is that we can learn a little bit of what we do. There's phone numbers, there's contact people. You can ask, hey, would I submit this? Administrative withdrawals are another great example of somebody in a situation where they might need paperwork to withdraw from a class retroactively. They'll go through UnDePaul and they may wonder, how do I get that started? That entire process is actually listed on the UnDePaul website. Student affairs is another like suite of resources, from career services, like I mentioned earlier, to our cultural centers, to our transfer peer mentors, and some other mentorship programs as well. Again, these may feel like they're not directly mental health related, you know, career, cultural center, but when we do have community, when we have people we can ask questions to, we can develop a sense of belonging. There was a study a few years back that found that most college students, regardless of age, felt like they did not belong in the same way that they did 15, 20 years ago. One of the bigger indicators of that feeling being present in a person's life was the fact that they weren't connected with people on campus, that they had fewer than, I believe it was, two people on campus that they felt connection with, whether that be another staff member or a peer or a student or a mentor. If they didn't feel like they connected with somebody, they weren't going to feel welcome. And if they didn't feel welcome, they didn't feel good. Having people who are in our corner that we can ask questions to can go a long way. Something I used to do, I used to think of my peers as supports or resources, where when I would sit down in a class, I would just introduce myself in the most basic, nonchalant way. Hi, I'm Enrique. Am I in the right class? Just something really small, just so I could break the ice with them. So if there was a date down the road where I had a question about an assignment or I wasn't sure about something, that I could ask them, hey, do you know when this is due? Hey, I'm not too sure on the instructions. Could you like explain it to me? Because what would happen my first few years of school is I'd have that feeling and I'd be like, well, I can't, who do I talk to about this? Do I talk to this classmate? Like that doesn't, I don't know if maybe they know, maybe they don't know. Maybe I should ask the teacher. And I'd get stuck in this loop of like, who should I ask? When I had broken the ice already, it was so much easier to make that leap and just ask. And I want to talk about, again, some other general mental health resources. Again, in that biopsychosocial model, we're considering a bunch of things, from our bodies to our minds to the environment around us. So I want to just cover each of these and give them a little thought and attention. The first one is like mindfulness apps. These are huge. These have grown so much in the last 10 years. Calm and Headspace are probably the two most commonly used, and they do offer student plans for like literally as little as like $5 a month, for literally the price of coffee. Not $5 a month, $5 a year. For the price of coffee, you can have access to an entire suite or entire class structure of like mental health resources for mindfulness meditations. They also have Headspace also has a series on Netflix. So if it's ever something you're just like curious about mindfulness, you can type in mindfulness into Netflix and you're going to find a couple of classes on that right there. There's other general wellness resources. So BitePal, Finch, How We Feel, Dailyo. These are different mental health resources. So BitePal is an app that encourages people who maybe aren't eating as much as they should to eat more regularly. Finch is also similar in terms of building a structured or even semi-structured like self-care plan. Finch is a nice tool where it's a bird, and as you do things to take care of yourself, you keep that bird fed. And that bird is a nice visualization of how can be a nice visualization of how we're feeling, because maybe you, like me, when you do take care of yourself, when you make sure you're fed, when you make sure you're sleeping, you feel okay, but you don't always notice the full benefit of it. That in class, maybe you're a little bit sharper, that when an exam comes, you feel a little bit more prepared. We might just lose that in the stress. That bird can be a nice visual representation of how we're feeling and how we're taking care of ourselves. A couple other national ones to let you all know about are the 988 suicide helpline. And again, like not only is it a number that you can text, call, there's a whole host of resources if you go into their website, from ways to find local therapists to local emergency resources to what to do if somebody you know is seeking support or concerned around harming themselves. And then intimate partner violence has a couple of resources. Well, you can even just Google these. Again, these aren't the only one. Love is Respect is one I really like. I share with students all the time. It's a website geared around just sharing general educational information on what healthy relationships look like and what do unhealthy relationships look like. What are some of those patterns, and how, if somebody finds themselves in one, can they find support? Same thing with the National Domestic Violence Helpline, whether those are local resources, a national helpline. What are ways people can get connected for not just taking care and making sure they're physically safe, but also making sure that their basic needs are met, that they have hygiene products, that they can get food, they can get childcare if they need it. All those things can be found in that. And again, like I said, resources a lot of times are like a big room. You walk in and you don't know all the furniture that's in there until you walk in and start poking around. And some other local resources. These are huge. These are like some of the more well-known ones: Center on Halsted, Chicago Park District, Chicago Public Library. Again, some of these things may not seem related to our mental health, but they 1,000% are. Actually, just last week, Chicago Park District was hosting a yoga in the park down on, I want to say it was like over by the Museum of Science Industry. I don't know the name of the beach, but it was like on 59th Street. It was an hour-long yoga class. They did it out on a cool day. It was breezy, but it was beautiful. Like, it was exactly what I needed. I literally signed up that day. It's a free class. They offer these in different neighborhoods and different parks. Take advantage of this. Summer's coming. Why not get out in the city, enjoy the parks? Again, if you are around here, your tax dollars are paying for these parks. Make use of them. My Block, My Hood, My City offers some great volunteer opportunities, but they also offer connection to mental health resources. And again, the Chicago Food Depository has the whole host of addresses for if somebody's food insecure, food pantries, soup kitchens. And again, maybe these aren't relevant to your needs, but there may be somebody in your life who would benefit knowing about it. Maybe that's some of our more elderly family members. Maybe that's somebody who's looking for a connection or a volunteer opportunity to take care of the people in their neighborhood. These can be great ways of getting connected. Um, and the last but not least, look in your restaurants and bars. Like, they're constantly posting community events. Sometimes they're talks. Sometimes they're like learning opportunities. Sometimes they are paid. Sometimes they are free. Again, there's so many available in the city. We are, when in my field, we call Chicago a resource rich area. It's an area where even in the adjoining neighborhoods and towns, there's so many things that are accessible to its citizens in ways that, like, smaller towns or in rural towns, they may not have access to that. Whether that's thousands, literally, of mental health counselors, or a robust library system that also has connection with food, or even like shelters. Again, in places like where I previously worked, Bloomington, we had a small library. They had books, but not much else outside of that. Versus even the Chicago Public Library, they can help you get connected and like apply for a waiver for your internet. Like, there's so many things here in the city to take advantage of. So I encourage people to. And again, these may not feel directly related to our mental health, but when we support the entirety of our existence, we support our physical bodies and our social desires, we can feel better. Yeah, I want to open. I know I want to make about 30 minutes and leave some time for Q&A. I want to see if anyone has any questions, thoughts, things I can clarify. Again, in this moment, I am your guys' resource. Couple quick reminders too for UCAPS for free on campus. It said on the slide, but we offer walk-in services from 9 to 5. If there's an emergency. Again, if you just need to consult, if you just need to talk to somebody, if you're like, I'm not sure if I need to talk to somebody, come on in. Over down at the Loop, so not far from you guys, over in CDM, Shahani, one of our newer social workers, she does cookies with a counselor. So she just invites students to come on by, sit down with her, shoot the breeze, ask some questions, learn a little bit about her, learn a little bit about our office. And again, some of those things may not be things we need information on in that moment, but they're good things to know. Again, maybe not for yourself, maybe for a friend, maybe for somebody else in your family, maybe just for a clear understanding. There is a lot of information coming at you guys. I tell people all the time, again, I think I would have a hard time being a student now. Even with all this extra brain power I think I got, it'd probably be tough to go back. There's just so much to have to remember. So yeah, think of us as as your vessels to remember those things.
I have a quick question.
Yeah,
Can you talk a little bit more about what the trauma track entails?
yeah, absolutely. Here, I'm going to bounce back. So our trauma track is specifically for students who've experienced relationship violence, domestic violence,
Relationship
sexual
violence.
violence
Okay.
during the time that they've been college students.
Okay.
Uh, they would meet with either Areli or Maggie. Those are our two designated trauma track counselors. And they might meet with them for longer term care. So as we normally meet people on a shorter term basis, that means like over the course of a couple of quarters, maybe a couple of months, they may meet with that student for a year, couple of years. They may meet with them more frequently as opposed to every other week due to our caseloads. They might see somebody weekly. And again, this is like designated time for those students. And then they also just have more information with regards to getting connected with Title IX, but they also maintain confidentiality with Title IX. So even in instances when somebody has reported with Title IX, they'll make themselves independent. They'll leave the room when we're discussing that student for consultation, just to make sure that they're protecting that student's confidentiality. Um, and then they also have resources like the rest of us to some other local counseling centers. If somebody, for one reason or another, isn't interested in meeting with us, or they might fall out of that scope of that college time frame that I mentioned, we can connect them with like Green Light Counseling is another one of our resources. It's a
Yes.
Chicago-based organization that
Hmm.
provides students with a counselor, and they give them 20 free sessions, like no questions asked. Um, if they're interested in getting support around some of that trauma history.
Thank you for that. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Because we serve a large number of not large, but a significant number of students that are law enforcement. And
Hmm.
so that's what made me think of that. Because we've done some specific sessions specifically for our law enforcement students
Yeah.
because that they have a little bit different experiences
Totally different.
in their work environment or what have you. So that was great. One other thing I just wanted to note, I just want to tell people, take advantage of the Chicago Food Depository. People really sleep on that. When I was at another university, students really took advantage of that opportunity, students and staff, matter of fact. As we know, the rising cost of food is going up. So I would, and they have some really great things at the Chicago Food Depository. It's not what folks think. So I would definitely encourage people to take advantage of that. Also, the My Block, My Hood, My City. I'm very familiar with that organization. They do a lot of great work. So they have services you can go in. I have a father-in-law who's elderly, and they've come in and done things for him. So it's a great way to get volunteer service, but also to take advantage of their services as well. So I would definitely advise people to look at that. And then also, I'm very familiar with the Chicago Public Library as well. As Mr. Silva stated, they have tons of free resources that people don't take advantage of. So don't sleep on your library. We have one right here downtown in the Loop, the Harold Washington Library, which is amazing, by the way. It's actually an amazing space. So check it out if you get an
Or
opportunity.
they got an atrium. It's gorgeous. Like in
Yes,
the
it is.
winter, you get that's maybe the only sun you'll see for a few months. It's a great place. And again, like one of those things that if people don't go around and explore and poke around, you may not know about.
Yep.
I mean, it's a lot easier to find things now when you get an influencer who says, "Hey, here's a spot." But sometimes we gotta kind of influence ourselves and find those spots ourselves and be the person to share with other people.
Exactly. Well, thank you. This has been great. I appreciate it. Any
Yeah, yeah,
additional comments or questions?
yeah. Please.
If not, we're going to end today's session. Um, all right, well, other than that, I'm gonna stop recording in today's session.